Hey everybody, welcome to the Unstuck podcast. I'm Heather,
Cameron.
and today we have a Q&A session. We've had some questions come up from some of the viewers, and wanted to make sure that we had opportunities to ask or answer the things that you were curious about. And we've got a few episodes under our belt. Hopefully, you're getting to know us a little bit better, and that this will be helpful. So, full disclosure, we did a scan over these questions, and I these are really candid responses right now because we haven't really discussed them, and so just know that you're gonna kind of get a taste of our thought process as we discuss these things, and I'm really looking forward to it. Actually, it's one of the things I love most about what we're doing is that we aren't scripting and we really are just talking. Like, it's actually where I enjoy spending a lot of my time is just thinking and understanding and learning as I go. And as we do that together, it's one of the aspects of a relationship that I've always been really grateful for, is our ability to talk and discuss things. And thankfully, we have a lot more now that we get to talk about, and as we know each other more and more. Okay, you ready?
Uh-huh.
Okay, first section is about, and there's two questions attached to this. Can you share how you discovered the use of pornography and what your initial reactions were?
Discovered the use.
So I think this might be, I'm wondering if this question is for you and how you discovered the use of pornography and what your reaction was to it when you discovered that. And then maybe I'll answer as well, like what my reaction was.
Yeah, I think it's actually for you, but we can
let's
do both.
answer
We can do both.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think as a child I had developed a hiding mechanism where I had these feelings and questions of sexuality that were difficult to understand, and even though my family was fairly open, we weren't there wasn't a lot of talking about it, but there was a lot of openness about it. So it's hard to explain, but I think I've always felt like I was seeking out sexual things, and I think just as soon as there was availability, I was so curious.
Well, talk about what pornography, like, because when we talk about pornography, we kind of imagine what's available right now on the internet. And so back when you were growing up, we're talking about like the 80s, right?
Yeah,
And pornography was something you went to a movie theater for, or you had to go
right,
talk to a clerk for the magazines behind the desk that
right.
were wrapped in plastic. It wasn't like you had access to it. So
Gosh.
what was that like for you, and how did it start? I think that this is probably very familiar even for young kids now. Like, it doesn't necessarily always start online, but like, what was that experience like?
I think it was maybe more in movies, and yeah, it was more in movies, and then occasionally, like, a friend would have a magazine from their dad or something like that. Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
So like, even things like, I remember you talking about like just the underwear catalogs, right? That came in the
Oh,
mail.
yeah.
Those things were made available, were used as material. And so when the internet came along, and then alongside internet, the freedom, because you're now a young adult, you're living on your own. It was just a natural like progression
Oh, yeah.
because the
I don't.
pattern
I
was
don't.
there.
The pattern was already well in place, and then as soon as internet came along, the pump was already primed. I mean, that was easy to slip into.
Um,
And I'd also, and this is not something I'm trying to blame, but I'd also started getting, that was when I started getting the migraines and strong headaches, was
so
those later teenage years when internet came along. And then so that coping mechanism already in place just made it really, really easy to slip into.
and very like, it's an addictive thing. I don't know that you
Correct.
necessarily, like, we've talked about addiction and what that is. I think we discovered that for you, the belief that it was an addiction was stronger than the fact that it was an addiction. But it's very addictive
Right.
because chemical release in your mind is
Right.
something that you
Well,
like. You're gonna have
an
draw
action
things
combined
forward.
with orgasm is very binding. And
Well, and that's what it's meant to do. It's actually meant to bond you to your partner.
right,
And here you are bonding yourself to like these images and screens, and it
right,
becomes your source of comfort.
right. And what was I going to say? Hmm.
Well, I had a thought, and we can cut this out if it's not something you want to talk about. Um, but I remember you telling me just places and think times where you found material as you were growing up. And I'm like, it is so fascinating to me that what you look for, you find. Like, have you ever wondered, and I this is maybe this is just me, like how somebody who might have a drug addiction can go to a new place, a new location, and somehow they know exactly where to find a resource for that drug. It's like they just know what to look for. They know what network to tap into, and I'm sitting there thinking, I'm like, if I had to go find drugs right now in the city that we live in, I would be like completely lost. I'm not looking for it though. It's not part of my life. It's not a drive for me to find. But if it was, I would. Um, and so is there anything like I think like why that was interesting to me is that like especially when we're dealing with our kids, like it's everywhere and it can be like you can do everything in your power to remove those things and put those blocks up in your home, protect
I
your
I
home.
think
But when you're looking for it, you will find a way to find it. And
yeah,
that's why I think like the blocking of things and that like the strict and like especially with when you're dealing with kids, like feeling that need to just say, oh, if I remove every source, they won't have it or they won't get into it is just not going to be possible because you found things in the most unlikely of places and it's almost like you knew where to look.
yeah. I mean, I actually think this is a very much of a thing that happens in life. If there's something that you believe you should have or can get or you deserve, whether it's good or bad, you'll find a way and to manage to get it in some
Your
way.
your brain is actually hardwired to find the evidence of what you want to see. So so whatever you want to find, you're going to look for it. That's like a whole other podcast about beliefs and you know what we have this filter.
Law of attraction and things
It's
like
just so
that.
interesting to me that that filter was so strongly in place and where you were able to find material even at a young age. And I bring this up because I think especially when dealing with kids or even a spouse or somebody in your life that like is struggling to overcome a challenge like this, restricting it and like removing it out of the scenario isn't really where the power is going to come from.
There is we and we've talked about this before. There is a removing it from accidentally running into it is one thing, but trying to white knuckle and remove it in a way where you're just trying to like I
Well, that's what you did for decades and it never
right, and it
worked.
doesn't work. So really increasing your competency, which I didn't understand then, but I know now, and I think it is for everyone, is becoming fully honest and truthful and just really having that radical honesty moment. I really do think creates the competency that blows away the part of you that is just trying to get through and thinks it can't control.
Well, when you're fully honest and accountable with yourself, not just revealing it to someone else, but full accountability for yourself, you give yourself your free will and choice back. And
Yes,
when you feel a victim to it, that's what addiction is. Like you're a victim to something else that's
yes.
stronger than you. And when you can regain that power and control back in your life, you actually have a lot more willpower than you
Well,
used
and
to.
you think you have ownership when you maybe will admit something, but it's not really ownership yet if you haven't really gone all the way with truth and
It's accountability.
taken accountability for it.
It's
Yes.
honesty and accountability.
Yes.
That's really what it boils down to.
Yes.
So to go back to the question, what was what was your initial reaction? Just to make sure we're covering it if it was talking about you. Like when and what did you remember
Uh
any kind of initial reaction when you realized like this is part of my life?
um scared because it felt so compelling that like it felt like I needed it, and at the same time um yeah, just mostly just like scared, like not now that I needed it, and like holy cow, like I just I this can't be me. And I do think at that point is when you start to think of yourself almost like two people. I think a lot of people in these kind of addiction kind of situations feel similar. You feel almost like two people.
Yeah.
Like, you
We
know,
actually just read a book. It's a couple that we know personally, and I think we're going to have them on. We actually initially talked about having them on, but they wrote a book about their experience with infidelity, and he talks a lot about that dual personality, and like you just the disassociation, that this thing that you're doing that's so far out removed from your morals and your integrity, you actually separate from yourself. And what was when I was reading this, I was like, oh, that's exactly what you had described to me. And it's interesting. I think it's a lot more common than people think. It's like just to, and I think men have an easier time compartmentalizing than women do, like, statistically
just in
or
general.
stereotypically, I guess I should say. Um, because I think biologically, we've been chatting about this recently, that men, you know, biologically, and for years and years, they were the ones that went to war, and they'd have to separate, like, the fact that they're leaving their families behind, and
And maybe have to do horrific things.
yeah.
I mean, so, and to survive and to protect.
Yeah,
There's a, yeah.
to have it not ruin and completely overcome your life, like to be able to compartmentalize, probably was a mechanism that produced a lot of good results and being able to continue forward with life
Yeah.
after hard things happen. But I think it's a disservice in some ways when we're not conscious that we're doing it, and that you really can.
It has a utility, but it has its downsides. And I think, yeah, I think that we can easily point those out.
Okay. And so I'll answer for on my side. Is there anything else you wanted to share?
Nope.
So how I discovered the use of pornography and what my initial reactions were. So, and we talk a lot more about this in our very first episode. So if you haven't seen that, go back to finding it. It's called T-Day. It's the very first one that we released, but it was, we're just like, it was right after Thanksgiving. We were making cookies, to take to neighbors, and my daughter had been putting on this pair of high heels that I had bought for a special occasion, and Cameron had taken pictures of her, and he came to show me them. And instead of just showing me a picture, he pulled up his camera reel
Photo album, yeah.
album where all the little thumbnails were, and immediately, like, what I saw, like, it wasn't my daughter. It was this just a picture. It was a pornographic image, and it wasn't like uber graphic, and it was kind of weird. It was like an artistic thing, but it was just of a naked woman, and I was like, what the heck is that doing there? And I'm like, I pulled it, I took it from, like, what is this? And I showed him, and like he looked super shocked, and I was like, what the heck? And it was almost like, at the time, I felt like kind of comical because I wasn't expecting that, certainly not to show me. So even that initial thing, like, I could tell he was very surprised by it, like, and I was thinking there had to be a good explanation for it. I wanted to know what it was. So my initial reaction was just, there had to be an explanation. Was definitely something we didn't deal with, so there must be something reasonable. And for that first day, I think for the most part had accepted, because I don't think we even talked about it before going to bed. Did we?
I don't remember.
Yeah, I don't remember even talking about it before bed. But when I woke up the next morning, is when my mind started settling on, like, this doesn't make sense. I just felt uneasy about it. And I think that was really just a prompting from God that this was time to pursue it further. And, because any time in the past, and there had been a few times, and it's interesting because the times that I'm actually pulling up in my mind aren't like, they weren't glaring like what I found, the picture. I did not have evidence like that ever before. There were just situations that, like, didn't feel right, and I had questions, and I accepted. And this time I was like, I just, like, no, I need to pursue it. So there, like I was saying earlier, we have a lot more information on that first T-Day episode. Please go check that out. It'll help answer a lot of the questions about what that discovery looked like, what my feelings were, what his feelings were. We go over that a lot. All right. Next question. How do you both feel about pornography use in the context of your marriage vows? Like, so I'm guessing, like, in the context
it's
of
not
our,
congruent. I don't think.
yeah. And then maybe also, I'm guessing it could be like, what does that mean about, like what that means for us now that it's in, like, because it wasn't before, like, what is that, how does that change things for us now, or it doesn't change things for us now? That's a good question.
Yeah.
So initially, it was definitely an agreement that we had, I mean, we talked about it before marriage, not in depth though. It would really, I think it was, do you watch pornography? Has pornography ever been an issue? And he had actually disclosed to me that he had been exposed to it in his early years, but that's as far as it went. It was like, and I think what you did there, and I remember talking to you about it, was that you had like had this cut off in your brain that you were going to be honest about what your exposure was up until a certain point, and then after that, it was non-existent.
Yeah.
And so I did know that he had had exposure, but as far as I was aware, it was he wasn't tempted to do it. And now in hindsight, like that's a red flag. If you have a husband or spouse or somebody that says, no, I'm not even tempted, that's probably not completely true because it's very tempting material. It was something I wanted to believe. But it actually in therapy and talking.
It could be true. It's up to the person to disclose. I mean,
Well,
they need to disclose it.
yes. But what I'm saying is the things that I felt took comfort in hindsight and talking it out with our therapist, it was like I found out like, no, that would be more of a red flag than anything when somebody says like, no, I'm not even tempted. But I loved it. That's exactly what I wanted to hear, and I didn't question it because I wanted that narrative. I was complicit in that narrative. I did not want to find
Well,
anything.
and we've talked about this. That's a good point. Everybody does this. You enroll each other into the roles that you want the other person to be. And you try to conform rather than to be seen and be differentiated.
And you look for what you want to find. Just like we were talking about earlier. I wanted to find that version of you. You knew that, and we're supplying it. And even when things weren't, like information was not congruent with that narrative, I found reasons and justifications and accepted explanations because that's what I wanted to find. I think one of the best things we can do for ourselves that will expedite us into growth and healthier relationships is to learn how to be willing to be uncomfortable with information, and like that growth is never comfortable. If you don't want to grow, then keep doing what you're doing and staying comfortable. But if you actually have the desire to grow, and I think that's why this happened to us, because we were actually making huge strides in our life to up-level the things we were doing in our relationship, in our financial world, all of those things, we were taking massive steps forward. And it was like, God was like, okay, you want this, I'm going to help you because you need this in order to really continue forward on the path that you're on.
I think it's just important in life, and Jordan Peterson I've heard say this, is to, the main thing he says to do is to tell the truth, or at least don't lie. And means by that is you don't always understand truth, but you definitely know whether or not you're lying. And if you just don't lie, no matter the situation, unless there is physical harm, or you are with some sort of enemy on a military front,
Well, there's a lot of people in domestic abuse.
But I'm just talking about in general parts of your life, the truth will always end up being the best plan. Always.
Even if it doesn't produce the result you want, you become a better person and you live in integrity with yourself and you can sleep well at night.
And I would argue that eventually the result will be what you want.
Yep.
It will eventually be what you want.
It might not come to you in the way that you think you want it, but it will come to you because when you create that, you draw. Like that's what you attract in life. the law of attraction is a real thing.
I think it is too.
Yeah.
And I think, like we talked about before, I think being honest is what makes you the type of person that makes you available to receive opportunities that being dishonest will close you off of. And even though, and there will be times where being honest will seem like it's shutting everything down and the whole world's going to crash on top of you. But I promise you, if you hold that course with truth,
Like you literally
it won't.
felt like you were gonna die. Like that's how you describe it. Like
Yeah.
it was death. And it actually is. You were allowing a version of yourself to die that you had relied on, that was your safety net. That was how the world saw you.
I
And
think
all of a sudden, like that person had to die for you to change and to be better and to
I think
grow.
that's actually a really interesting point because, like, I think so often we don't. So often when we're upset about results, it's not that we're upset about our results. We're, if you really dig into it, we're upset that we know that what we're doing right now isn't working and we don't want to change.
Yep.
And so when you allow yourself to be truthful and you allow that discomfort, what you're doing is you're allowing yourself to truly take ownership and be honest. And that is hard because that means you know the thing you're doing, producing this negative result, is not working and you are willing to finally change.
And for more about this, definitely check out the last episode we released called, or maybe it might not be the last episode when we're filming these. Check out the episode on victimhood.
Yep.
It was called what? What did we name it?
It was the victimization trap.
Yeah.
But it's
Check that out. We talk a lot more about this.
yeah.
But to get back to the question, I love how we just kind of like
Yeah.
but how do you feel about the pornography use in the context of your marriage vows? So we established that that was definitely not part of our marriage like the promises and vows that we made to each other. It was an agreement, and we did touch base. I did touch base multiple times, but I always touch base from the, you wouldn't do that, right? You would tell me, right? Like that wouldn't be our problem, right? You know, when I hear it. And so like there was a lot of judgment and a lot of like bad like energy where it really made it difficult for him to talk to me. Just a side note, as you're having those conversations, like approach them. If you have concerns or you want to talk about it, approach them like in the headspace where they could tell you, like in the energy where they could say, actually, I'm struggling. Like practice it out. What would you do? How would you feel? Like get into that headspace so that you actually can be somebody safe to talk to if somebody's struggling, because
it's a difficult principle to preach, to be the safe space, because a lot of times the person who's being safe, it can feel like they're the ones being victimized, and so it can feel like you're victim blaming or something like that. We're really not. I think by preparing yourself outside of trigger to be someone who is accepting and open and able, so that subtle thing Heather did where it's like, this isn't something you look at, right? That's very subtle, but it's a way of not being open. It says to me,
I'm saying I need you to answer this way or I'm
yes.
not saying.
And then because I'm enrolled, and being okay for her, I say,
And
oh yeah, totally not. When it's not.
Decades of playing that game, it just became like, there's no way.
Yeah.
But definitely do the self-work. Like, why are you married to this person anyway? I mean, we're talking about spouses dealing with this and that kind of disclosure. Are you married to that person because they provide this version of that validates you in such a way that you feel good about life? Or are you married to this person because you genuinely love them and you want to help them and walk through life with them? Like, why are you there? And that opens you up to really, instead of like having it mean something about you when they're struggling, you can actually be a loving support to somebody who's hurting. And that's what I learned through this. Like, I had to learn it. I was like confronted, and I could either go down the bitter pathway or I could go down, I want to help you and work with you and I want to fix this. I think it's key to really check in with whether or not why you're in that marriage, why you're in that relationship. Are you there for you because it makes you feel good, or are you there because you love that person, you want to walk through life with them? Okay, let's shift into what it means for us now. Like, you broke a promise, and a commitment. And even because of our faith, I would say a covenant that you made with God and with me. And so, how does that translate now into into what we make, how we make sense of our marriage? Like, what do you think about that?
It's been some readjusting of our thinking. I think it takes the perspective of understanding what we had learned and then now applying that to what our marriage is now. So, for instance, I feel that as a Christian, my understanding of Christ and the atonement has been incredibly enhanced from this whole experience. Instead of feeling like
A lot more personal.
yeah, a lot more personal. Instead of feeling like I was cursed and afraid to tell my wife about it, I now feel that I have this understanding that's amazing. And now allowing myself to be seen and you allowing yourself to be seen, we have felt a strength and a growth that I would not trade.
Well, and a stronger connection.
Yeah. So to honest, more and more, I'm actually grateful for the experience than I am that we didn't have it. I don't believe it broke our marriage at all. I think it actually finally got us to have a real marriage.
It helped us with what we wanted and we didn't know how to get.
Yes.
And we had bad ideas of how to get it. Like plans that were just really immature and childish because we had had the growth yet. And God's like, that's what I love about this is he loves us so perfectly. You know, we think of love as like, well, the loving thing to do is to not do anything that hurts the other person, right? That's me loving you. And yes, kindness is part of love, but it's not kind when you know, think about it for a second, like in terms of a child learning how to walk. You don't like seeing your child fall down or bump their head or smack, like as a toddler's learning how to take those first steps. Sometimes they fall and they fall on their face. They run into something, they get knocked over, they cry. Would it be loving to go, oh, they're gonna get hurt, and then you just pick them up and carry them for the rest of their life because they could fall again? Would that be loving? That would actually be abusive because it's just part
Right.
of development that them falling helps them learn how to do it right so they can get up and try the next time. And doing it over and over and over again produces the result of them being capable human beings that can walk where they need to go. And God treats us that way. We are toddlers learning to walk in his eyes. I think until we die. I don't know that we ever actually get through that point because he's just so wise and so perfect. And I believe we're here to learn to become more like him. And so we have the potential to become more like him. But I think we're just, this earth life's only going to get us so far. I think there's more to come after we're done. But it was loving of him to see, oh, Cameron and Heather want this. And it's actually something that's good for them. And I want that for them too, but they're stuck. And so to keep it hidden, to have Cameron be able to not have to go through the pain of being revealed and like, because some of the pain that he was covering with this problem, this habit was not completely his fault. And, the compassion that we want to have for people that are struggling, like to allow him to stay stuck when God knew he had the potential to become strong. He knew that this weakness could be his strength. And he knew that where I was, relying on Cameron for my safety, that unless I was confronted with needing to rely on God more than him, like I wouldn't grow either. And so he allowed it to happen. And it took me longer, I think, than Cameron, because Cameron had to confront something like abruptly, and it was immediate for him and was obvious the things that he had to do. For me, it was a little bit more ambiguous. I had to really learn detach in the unhealthy ways that I was attached to him for my safety and reattach to God. And that was a lot harder and longer process for me. So the gratitude came a lot later for me for this experience. It was hard for me to say I was grateful, even though I was recognizing the fruits. But really, truly, I think we both are in a place now where I am grateful. It's hard some days. It hurts some days. Some days I really wish it didn't have to have happened this way. But when I look at where we were and where we are now, I I'm grateful. I don't want it. I don't want to lose the progression that we've had if it means going back to where we were and you just never had that problem.
Yeah. No,
That
it
wouldn't serve me. It wouldn't feel good.
short answer, it strengthened our marriage. We had a kind of a provocative title on our first video for Tea Day, which is how pornography saved our LDS marriage. And
Pornography addiction.
it was meant to be provocative. We'll admit that, but at the same time, it was true. This
It catapulted us.
this kick in the butt really did catapult us
Thank
into
heavens,
yeah.
God loved us enough to allow us to be unhappy and even angry with him, because I had those moments, because he knew what it would produce for us. And I'm grateful for that. When we can look at any of the challenges that come our way as opportunities for growth, and that it's like a love, they're for us, they're showing up for us. Like we really have the potential to grow if we choose into victimhood instead, and woe is me, like I can't believe this is happening, I don't deserve this, then you're just going to be unhappy and miserable. Like, utilize it as an opportunity. It really can be one.
Yeah.
But then also let's talk about, like, what does it mean now? Like we had a line in that we drew that said, like, pornography should not be part of our marriage. Like, that's a deal breaker. If you're going to watch pornography, like, we can't be married. I think that's where I was before. I don't know that we've talked really specifically about it or verbalized it, but I think that was kind of an understood. And I think that's probably why, like, when you're addicted into something or feeling like you have no control over it, like, well, I don't know if I can stop. So she knows, like, does that mean it's over then? I can't stop. I can't stop on my own. What makes me think I can stop once she knows about it?
Yeah.
So I want to talk a little bit about what our boundaries are now, in with this, because it's changed. I no longer have pornography as like this line. It's not there. Pornography is not a line for me. I even would dare to say, and I've been thinking about this lately. What about infidelity? Is infidelity a line for me? And I don't think infidelity is the line. Now, does that mean I'm okay with it? I'm open to it. I'd be fine if that happened. Like, no,
No.
that's not all right. Infidelity is definitely something that is not okay thing in our standards. But that's not the line. The line at this point is, like, do you want to be here? And are you willing to do the work to get to a place, right? Because the more I'm learning about these things, I think I viewed pornography, even infidelity, as something that was like personal attack almost. That you just disrespect, you watching pornography was just so disrespectful to me, and it was because you didn't love me, and I wasn't good enough for you. Like those are very common themes, and it's understandable actually to feel that way. But the more I learn about the why, and this is why, if you're dealing with this with somebody, really ask them why. Try to understand where they're coming from and why they did what they did, not just what they did. Get to know why. Ask the questions, and please, if you're the one, I mean, it might be, I'm sure it was exceptionally difficult for you to be asked all those questions.
Yeah.
In fact, I know it was.
Very.
But you answering them and being willing to be seen helped me understand you. And when we can have compassion and understanding, it's just different. It's a different story. It's no longer you watch porn or you had an affair. It's like you are a person that's dealing with these things, and that's how you self-soothe. That was your band-aid. So you might be the type of person that says, I want this more than I want you. Like, you could have gone that route, but it isn't actually what you wanted. In fact, you hated that about yourself. You wanted it to be gone.
Right.
And so because you were wanting our marriage and it was hurting you that this was part of, like, keeping you from our marriage fully, like, you were willing to put in the work. And so that's now my new boundary. And I don't know, like, I think those boundaries might need to be assessed as you deal with life, but I found a new standard for myself. It's not the action. Like, if I'm in my marriage purely for the status and validation that it gives me, then maybe that would be a line, right? Because you broke that, and I've had to deal with that. Like, there are feelings of, like, oh, that's I don't want people to know that, like, because it meant something. When I'm making it mean something about me and how the world's going to view me and how I'm validated as a person, then yeah, it's icky. I don't like it. But when I really like step out of that and go, wait a minute, like it actually isn't about me. And do I love you? Are you my person and someone that I care about and I want to help through life and I've like committed to and promised you and God that I would? Like it becomes so much more than just something you did that wasn't okay. Like it's no excuses.
Well, I mean, we all tend to be very quick to admit that no one's perfect except for Christ, right? But then when somebody isn't perfect,
Yeah.
we have now reasons to shove them off or do whatever. So I think, yeah, I think what you're onto is a really important point of compassion, and maybe we should be assessing these boundaries we think we have, and yeah, I think evaluation is a core thing in life, period.
Yeah.
But yeah.
It really, if we can come out of ourselves and like, are we worrying about ourselves and what, you know, only, or are we actually like really truly choosing in to loving other people? It changes how you look at those things. So I think that's where we're at now. It's not like, and again, I don't mean to imply like I am okay with porn in our marriage because no, if it happened again, we would be having some conversations, but it wouldn't be you broke your promise and you watch porn. It would be like, what's going on with you? Like, are you okay? What's happening? Like, why was this now an outlet that you chose into? Because um we've covered this ground. We went through all of this work. We were in a good place. Like, what's hurting now? And are you still wanting to be here? Is this still, something you want? And then we would go from there. That would be the new standard. Would you agree?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. We are long-winded because my screen I had to reopen. Um, so those are, yeah, we got through 2 questions. I think that's good for today. Um,
We can pick that one back up.
yeah. Well, we'll come back with more because there's some, just the brief overview that I looked at these questions. There's some really good ones. So what we love about these questions is this podcast is not something that we're doing because we really are excited to come and share like things that happened to us that have been hurtful. We just knew that we had found a lot of happiness and healing and growth, and we felt a calling to share these lessons and help other people because it's something people just simply don't talk about. So we're going to put into the description below a Google form that allows you to ask questions anonymously. You won't have to identify your email address. There's no name requirement. You literally can go on there and just ask your question and it will send it to us as a response on a spreadsheet. So we want to make this easy for you as you're dealing and navigating with some really delicate topics. I think that like I remember Cameron talking to me, about like he would kind of dabble in help, right? Like articles or videos or TED Talks that dealt with addictions and stuff like that. But he didn't do it too much or frequently because he didn't want to seem obvious, right? And so we know this is hard. And if you're in that space where you're not feeling strong enough yet to say something, you're not alone and you're not a bad person. You're just in process. So let us help you if you have a question or, even as a spouse, if you're dealing with some, hard things and you'd like to have our opinion, use the Google form. It's a completely anonymous and we'll be able to share answers that might help. So that's why we're here. That's what we're doing, why we're doing it. So anyway, thanks for joining us today. Appreciate you viewing and all of your support. Please remember to like and subscribe, and we will see you next time.